is to help explain how price floors and price ceilings create inefficiencies in a market system. First, we're going to define what these things are. So a price floor is going to be defined as, I don't know, how should we say this, a price that is set above the equilibrium price. And it's actually more than that, okay? It's a price floor, and it says that the price may not go below. Okay, so the price cannot go below the price floor. So for example, if this is the equilibrium for this market, this would be the price at equilibrium, and then this right here would be the quantity at equilibrium. So I'll just make that note here. That's the price at equilibrium, quantity at equilibrium. If we put in place a price floor, what that is saying that due to whatever policy consideration we've decided, because we know better, that we're going to put in place a price floor, that means the price would actually end up being slightly above the equilibrium price. So in other words, what we're trying to do is guarantee that the price paid in the market is going to be at least this level right here. And no matter what the market pressures do, the actual price can never be below the price floor. Okay? Price ceiling, on the other hand, okay, this is a price mandated below the equilibrium price. Okay? And it's not allowed to go above it. So in this case, we have a price ceiling, and the price is not allowed to go above this level. Okay? So that now you kind of understand a little bit about what we're talking about. Now some characteristics of this. All right? In this case, with the price floor, you end up with a quantity demand and a quantity supply. Okay? Let me erase this arrow so we can eliminate it here. No confusion. Okay? We have a quantity supplied right here, quantity demand right here. The quantity supply end up being is greater than the quantity demanded. Therefore, a price floor will often always lead to a surplus. Okay? Price ceiling, on the other hand, now you've got a quantity supplied, quantity demanded. In this case, the demand becomes greater than the supply, and so this leads to shortages. Okay? In a genuine free market setting, the price will always go to the equilibrium. And at the equilibrium, there is no shortages, there is no surplus. Now, there are situations, though, where policymakers, usually the government, will set in place a price that is not at equilibrium. And they do it for a variety of reasons. Most of them happen to be political. So in economics, you know, we like efficiency, but policymakers don't necessarily. So what we're going to do is look at an example of a price ceiling. Okay? So a little bit of history. Okay, in the 1970s, there was an issue with gasoline. All right, in the 1970s, in particular, the supply of oil was choked off by what we call the Arab oil embargo, and so prices, as a result of a decrease in supply, went way up. Okay, so these prices at the new equilibrium ended up being, let's say, in today's dollars would be around $4. Okay? Now people were used to paying, let's say, I guess in today's dollars we'll call it $1.50. Okay? Now, which would we rather pay, $1.50 or $4? Obviously $1.50. So politicians, they decided, you know what, I think the public will be happy and they'll vote for us if we help them out and say gas can never go above $2. So this becomes a ceiling. Okay? So if we carry the ceiling across, this is our new supply curve. and this is our demand curve that exists. Okay, the other supply curve is irrelevant at this point. It doesn't matter because it no longer exists. So at our new equilibrium, the price should be $4, but there's a price ceiling in place, therefore the price can only be $2. Now, I told you all at the beginning that ceilings and floors create inefficiencies. Why did they create inefficiencies? Well, actually, let me answer that in a second. First, this policy ended up creating shortages. I'll demonstrate why. So at the $2 price, okay, not every business can afford to sell at a $2 price. So the quantity that producers are willing and able to sell becomes our QS, and the amount demanded at the $2 price is going to be our quantity demanded, which is greater. The quantity demanded is greater. Therefore, this policy led to shortages. And shortages lead to long lines, and it also leads to many people not getting the gas that they wanted. Okay? Now, why is this considered inefficient? Okay? Get rid of the squiggle so that it's not in the way. All right, the reason it's considered inefficient is because at a $2 price, with this amount of quantity demanded, there is no incentive to conserve. Okay? No conservation. And at the same $2 price over here for producers, there's no incentive to produce. So there's less production. Okay? So what that ends up doing is it keeps resources from being used in their most efficient manner. Okay? Instead of we as individuals maybe moving towards a more efficient car or driving less, instead we make no decisions based on price, and so we end up using more gasoline than we otherwise would have. And then the same thing with producers. The incentive to go explore and find more oil was totally blown away. And so it ended up creating more problems than what it could have solved. So that's why price ceilings are really a bad idea. These are universally a bad idea. Nobody, I don't think anybody ever really does this anymore because of the big issues. Okay, it ends up affecting everybody unless you're at the front of the line. Okay? Now, price floors, on the other hand, sometimes these happen because they don't affect as many people, and policymakers, remember, they're still trying to get elected. So let's say, for example, in farming, I mean, if you think about it, all the technologies in farming have just exploded the supply, which has basically led to low prices. So milk, for example, I think today, let's say milk's around $3 a gallon. Okay? Well, suppose you're a milk producer and you get together with all the other milk producers and you lobby Congress to put in place what's called a price floor. So remember, the floor says the price is not allowed to go below it. And the Congress decides, you know what, yeah, you guys work hard, y'all do deserve to make more money. Therefore, we're going to pass a law that says the price of milk cannot fall below $4. Okay? So what that does, at the price of $4, it gives people an incentive to not buy as much, okay, or to find alternatives, conserve, if you will. But at the same time, at a price of $4, it gives producers the incentive to expand production, to produce even more. So the quantity supply ends up bigger than the quantity demanded. And so what do we end up with? We end up with a huge surplus. But worse than that, we end up with resources being driven towards dairy production instead of toward whatever else it is that the market would have allocated it for. And you know, you could name whatever you want it to be. I mean, you know, that same land could be used to manufacture things, or the cows could be used for beef instead of milk. I mean, there's just all kinds of things, and the point is that these price floors and price ceilings end up removing the market forces that lead to efficient allocation at equilibrium, and instead basically bastardizes the market system, driving resources towards milk production, and at the same time causing people to buy less milk. And so what do you do with all the surplus? Okay? It basically gets wasted. And so that's why price floors are a bad idea. Now, we do less and less of this with commodities, simply because, people can demonstrate this, and it makes no sense. An even bigger political issue, though, is the price floor that we actually do have in the labor market. Okay? So if you look at the marketplace for, we're going to call this unskilled labor, because that's really what the minimum wage applies to. Okay, it doesn't apply to people who make a lot of money with skills. Unskilled labor, though, or entry-level positions, things like that, is subject to a minimum wage. So let's look at for a second, and let's just pretend that the actual equilibrium wage for unskilled labor is $5. Okay? But the mandated wage, which is a price floor, is $7.25. So at $7.25, you end up with a quantity demanded of this amount, a quantity supplied of this amount, which means quantity supply is greater than quantity demanded. We end up with a surplus. Okay, all of that makes sense. But the difference here is that the surplus is actually people. Okay, it's not extra milk or extra anything else. This is like people, so it matters. So over here, when we look at the demand for labor is the businesses who want to hire people. Okay, the supply of labor is the workers who want to work. As the wages are increased, more workers want to work. However, as wages are increased, fewer businesses want to hire. So what do we end up with? This surplus is actually unemployment. Okay? Now, there's debate as to how much unemployment is caused by this, but there's absolutely no debate as to who would be unemployed using this scenario. So as an example, given that you have to pay somebody $7.25 an hour, okay? You have to pay $7.25 an hour. So who would you hire? Okay, as a business owner, you're going to hire the best person you can get for $7.25 an hour. Okay? So you would definitely hire this guy. He's enthusiastic, he does a great job. However, what happens to this guy? Okay? So the big concern here is that the inefficiency that goes on in the marketplace because of a minimum wage is multifold. Okay? Number one, it creates unemployment for the exact people that we're trying to help. Okay? So who becomes unemployed? It's the uneducated. Okay? It's people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Okay? It could be people with disabilities. Who else could it be? Maybe people with low skills, just in general. Okay, so you could think of a number of reasons why somebody would have low skills. And so the problem that economists see with the minimum wage is that it limits the opportunity for these people to gain experience and then gain those skills, and instead forces them to live on welfare, things like that, which isn't really good for their self-esteem. In either case, the point is this: very few people would actually be paid below what is currently the minimum wage, but at this point in time, the actual payment of $5 an hour to somebody would be considered illegal. And so it actually does prevent some employment for some groups of people. And so that's why economists don't like this. The point being this, though: price floors lead to surpluses, price ceilings lead to shortages. Neither one of those is considered an efficient way to allocate resources. And so in a market system, we don't like to see those things just because it changes people's incentives.